Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Okay, once more. Good afternoon, everyone. Y'all look good. One thing about black women, baby, we don't know what we've been through, okay? We look better. Well, I just want to welcome y'all to this conversation about real people, real problems, and real leadership. My name is Cierra. I'm the founder and CEO of Workolution, Inc. It's a company where we have employee education and advocacy brands. Our flagship brand is called Cagebird HR. We provide employees access to independent HR support across the country, as well as our new AI product, Work Receipts, which is a mobile app that allows you to keep receipts on what happens at work and learn in real time if your rights have been violated. I am so honored to be on stage with these amazing women here today to have this conversation. But I do want to give some safety announcements. We may be talking about trauma, toxic workplaces. I do want to encourage everyone to honor themselves in the best way that they know how if you find yourself triggered, including stepping out for a second, because nothing we're going to talk about here is more important than your mental health. And then the other thing is we all know what's going on in this country right now, and we know why. Clock it. But for this hour, before we hit the town tonight, we will not be talking about any of that, okay? What we're going to be talking about today is strategies, advice, and wisdom from these wonderful women about how do we survive the world of work, because one thing for certain and two things for sure, we will get through it, okay? I don't care what they're doing over there in Washington, we will get through it. So I'm going to stop talking and let this panel introduce themselves, and then we'll get started.
Well, hello, everybody. Y'all look absolutely beautiful today, so thank y'all for coming to our session. My name is Haley Dennis. I am the founder and CEO of Bountiful Leadership. Just like y'all, I've worked in corporate for the last 20 years. I started when I was 16 years old, and I worked through finance, I worked in tech, and finally I decided I want to go back and I want to give back to the ladies that are working in corporate now and take all of my experience to help you all. And that's why I started my firm, and we do coaching, we do consulting, and we also do facilitating. So I'm so happy to meet y'all and happy to be here today.
Good afternoon, my name is Heather Karazim, and I am the global head of DEI at Eli Lilly and Company. I've been with Lilly for about 27 years, started out as a sales rep, did a lot of roles on the commercial side of the business, but then made a switch into HR about 5 years ago, and started in the DEI role last October, and it is an exciting time to be in DE&I.
Eli Lilly is deep in here. I see y'all in y'all red.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michelle Bullard. I'm the CEO and founder of MyHRLane. We are an HR service and staffing provider based out of Atlanta, Georgia. I've spent the past 20 years in human resources in corporate America and navigating HR, corporate policies, and I'm so excited to be here having a conversation with my sisters. This is my first time at the summit, and I'm having a phenomenal time, so thank you for having me.
All right, well, let's get into it. So as Black women in corporate settings, we often face challenges that if we don't really go into it with the right mindset and boundaries can impact our physical and mental health. Throughout your careers, what has been the most significant mindset shift or personal practice that has helped you navigate workplace challenges as African American professionals?
I think for myself, it's been confidence. We hear that word so much, and we tell ourselves we have to have confidence. But let's be honest, y'all, there are some times when we do not have that confidence. It's just not there. But I've found that the more I support myself and pour into myself, the more I'm going to feel confident. I remember when I started in tech, and I had no experience at all in tech. I had a manager who believed in me. And so one day, we were trying to figure something out. And of course, I was the only Black woman on the team. And I saw this white man Google. This was years ago, but he pulled up Google to find the answer to the question. And I said, if he can Google, I can do it, right? Thank you. And so that was just so eye-opening to me because I could say, they can figure stuff out, I can figure stuff out. If I can put myself in their shoes, learn, put in the time, increase my skills, that's gonna increase my confidence to help me to advocate for myself and to go after what I want. And that's helped me so much in my career, even leaving corporate. Working in corporate since 16, I was a corporate girl. I knew when my paycheck was coming, I knew I could do the work, I was there, I was all corporate all the time. So stepping into my own business was a huge shift, and I had to have the confidence to do it. If I failed, it's okay. I can go back to corporate, but let me take that chance and try on myself to see what I can do. And that mind shift and that mindset has helped me so much throughout my career.
I think for me, it's really important that you know the culture of your company. I think, the definition of culture, it's made up of the people, but it's also the unwritten rules of what's acceptable, what's not, how things actually really get done in the company. And Lilly is a very people-oriented, relationship-based company. I love it. It has kept me there for 27 years. But you also realize that, who you know is really important and who you interact with. And while, setting up meetings with people isn't necessarily like the most natural thing to do for me, I realized it was really important to develop really strong relationships with not only the people I was working with, but other people in other parts of the business. And so one tip that I think is really important as you put yourself out there and put time on someone's calendar or connect with someone, I always ask, hey, who is somebody else that you think I should talk to? And then it was like a nice sort of warm transfer to the next maybe one-on-one relationship building meeting that I was going to schedule. Because I know it can feel very uncomfortable. Again, in a company that's very relationship based, how do you connect with people that maybe you don't work with every day? And so I always would ask, hey, what's one more person, or who's one more person that you think I should talk to? And it was an easy way then for me to have another connection.
Awesome. Well, for me, I know that my career took off once I started to advocate for myself. And I recall getting a position at this company that I had been trying to work at for years. And I was so excited to be a part of this company. It had a great reputation. I knew I could move up in human resources. And in speaking to my parents, who are baby boomers, they said, work hard, Ray, keep your nose down, which means don't rock the boat, right? Keep your nose clean and it will pay off. And I said, okay, Mama and Daddy, I'm gonna do that. So I get to this place and the company had multiple divisions. And in each division, they had an HR team. And so I was part of one division and an HR team. I'm the only Black person on the HR team. I'm also the only Black person in the operational leadership team. So I knew going in, I had to make them feel comfortable with my presence. I had to shrink myself, but not too much. I couldn't speak too loudly. I had to make sure that the stereotypes that we carry on our backs, that I did not have those stereotypes. I couldn't be the angry Black woman. I couldn't be aggressive. I couldn't be loud. In my office, when you came into my office, I didn't play rap music. It was pop and R&B. Because I had to make sure they felt comfortable coming into HR's office and coming into this Black woman's office. When we would go out to lunch, I dared not eat fried chicken. Sure. And I'm from Kentucky, so that was very, very hard. But I listened to my parents say, work hard, Ray, work hard. And so when opportunities came up to do more and take on projects, I was raising my hand. You need someone to do new hire orientation? I'll do it. You need someone to facilitate leadership training? I'll do it. You need me to be your representative for the ERG group? That'll be me. I need to serve on a committee? I'll do it. You want me to help train newer HR associates coming through? Absolutely, I'll do it. And so when the opportunity came up for a promotion, absolutely I applied. And the thing is, all of the projects that I was doing, I was knocking it out of the park. I was doing exceptionally well. So when we came together as a team, I was getting all the recognition. Great job, Ray. Ray did this on this project. excellent job. I was getting all of the recognition. So when the opportunity came up to move up, I had colleagues say, Ray's a shoo-in. I had colleagues in other divisions say, Ray, I'm not even going to apply for the job because I know you're going to get it. I said, I know, I'm going to get it. I said, don't even apply. But lo and behold, I didn't get the position. Guess who they gave it to? They gave it to a white man, less experience, less education, less tenure with the company. He didn't pick up any additional projects. He worked Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and he went home. Whereas I was working 10-hour days for well over a year and a half. We've all been in that situation, right? And so I was angry. I became the angry black woman. I was mad, I was pissed, because I did what my parents told me to do, which was work hard, and it didn't pay off. And so this veil that I had on finally came off, and I finally saw, I'm long-winded too, so forgive me.
I ain't gonna stop you, girl.
Okay.
You over there preaching.
This veil that I had, because the company had a great reputation, a great name, but this veil finally came off, and I realized that the environment that I was working in was not the environment that was going to move me to the next level. So I said, I'm not taking on any more projects. I crossed my arms and I said, I'm not doing any more. And when other projects came up, my boss came to me and said, hey, Ray, you want this project? No. I'm good. So the volunteer opportunity finally came to pass as a voluntold. So no longer was Ray, will you be willing to do this project? It was Ray, I need you to do this project. And so I went into his office and I said, help me understand how these projects align to my current role, and then also help me understand how we're going to create a career path for me so that when the next promotion comes up, I'm a shoo-in. And if you want me to continue to train the new hires, the new HR staff, let's work on a leadership development plan where I can strengthen those skills and those competencies so that I can strengthen that leadership style. My boss, I remember it like it was yesterday. He crossed his hands, he leaned back in his chair, and he said, where is this coming from? He said, last year you were not asking for all of this. You didn't care about career development. You were not asking for leadership development. What's changed? I said, I'm advocating for myself.
Is there an offering plate going around anywhere? Thank you so much for that story. I think it highlights the difference between promotable and non-promotable work. And as Black women, we often don't know the difference, and we assume and take on more than we should.
I had something else to add.
Oh, go ahead, girl. My bad. My bad, girl.
I had something else to add. So I knew that I had to leave the organization. It was just a matter of time. It was just a matter of when. And when I went to and applied for another organization, the first example that I gave them in advocating for myself was negotiating my salary. And I will tell you this, as someone who has spent 20 years in human resources, this room does not negotiate our salaries. I'm starting to see it a little more and more in the executive space, but we are typically fearful of negotiating our salaries. That's the first sign and the first example that you can give your employer that you're going to advocate for yourself. And the CEO was very respectful, and he understood, and he knew what he was getting in me advocating for myself. And it was in that company that I was able to excel. I was able to move up into VP, C-suites, but I never lost the ability to advocate for myself. And it's risky and it's scary when you do it the very first time, because the outcome could be I could be seen as a troublemaker, I could lose my opportunity to move up in the company, or I can lose my job. And for me, I did all three. But I had to do that in order to get to a space of where I could grow and where I could start advocating for myself. And that's how I moved through corporate America.
All right now. All right. So adding on to that, Ray, how can we as Black women distinguish between everyday workplace challenges and toxic work environments? Because today these people be towing the line, okay? It's real tight. And so how can we, and anybody can chime in here, but how can we tell the difference between, okay, this is just normal corporate stuff that we have to experience and navigate versus, oh no, this is now entered into a toxic space and I need to figure out an exit strategy, whether that means exiting the organization or finding a new manager?
Absolutely. So I think the best way to understand whether or not you're working in a toxic work environment is how do you feel every time you walk into that building? I know that when I started my career years ago, and I didn't know I was working in a toxic environment, but I would have to sit outside of the office for 15 minutes to get mentally prepared before I would walk into this office space. That's not a normal, everyday workplace challenge. That's a toxic work environment. And so everyday work challenges are going to be, I'm frustrated with my colleague, I'm mad at my leader, or my idea didn't get picked up or implemented. I may get frustrated by a project or a deadline, or I may have a manager that's micromanaging me through a project to hit a deadline. There may be days that I don't feel like going into work, but overall, I still feel respected, I still feel valued, I enjoy the work that I do. Overall, I enjoy the company because, as you said, the company culture is thriving. Those are normal workplace challenges. Where it changes and where it shifts is if it is adversely impacting your health. You're getting headaches. You don't want to go into work. We all have those Sunday anxiety where we don't feel like going to work on Monday. But when it turns into a Monday anxiety, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, there's something there that you can't ignore. And the way that we have to deal with so much in the workplace as Black women, our health has to be top priority. And so when you're working in that toxic work environment, it's going to look different for all of us, and we're going to all react differently. And don't think that a toxic work environment is just your manager screaming at you, belittling you, calling you out your name. It could also look like your leader being passive aggressive, your colleagues only communicating with you through email, people trying to undermine your authority. All of that is toxic work environment. People gossiping about you behind your back. And the decision that you have to make is not whether or not I stay. You don't stay in a toxic work environment. The decision is when do you leave, and to your point, what does that exit strategy look like? Because at the end of the day, all we have is our health. We have Angie Stone who just left. I mean, she just left in a car accident, but we don't know when our last days will be. And your work should not put you in a situation where you have to decide whether or not you get a paycheck or whether or not you're going to remain healthy. And so again, when you're in that space of that toxic workplace, and again, it doesn't have to look volatile, it can again look passive aggressive, you have to decide when is it time to leave.
Can I add to that?
Absolutely, go ahead, girl.
There's just one question that I like to ask my clients when they get to that point where they're trying to decide, do I stay or do I go? And I ask them, is this job still serving your purpose? What is your purpose? When you started that job, maybe you're 2-3 years in, has your values changed? Has what you want to do with her? Maybe it was money when you first started. Maybe it's I'm about that money, I'm about that dollar. Maybe you started a family. Maybe you become a caretaker. So many things happen. Yesterday, in the program last night, we said life be lifing, right? Stuff happens. And you have to examine where am I at right now? And is this job still serving my purpose? And that can really help you decide, what do I need to do next?
How many of y'all been at work and started documenting stuff on like a little note tab, like a little Word document over to the side of stuff that, just in case. Okay, that's a sign that, things might be going left, okay? That's a sign. And so I want to take a second to talk about work receipts. So everybody take out your phone, everybody take out your phone. Everybody take out your phone, everybody take out your phone. Go to your apps. Your personal phone. Do not put this app on your work phone, Lord. Your personal device. Go to the App Store, download Work Receipts. WRK, no O. Work Receipts is a mobile app that allows you to document things that happen at work in a safe space off of company machines. It'll tell you in real time if your rights have been violated. I made this app for us. because nobody is innovating for the things that we experience to make them easier for us to navigate the world of work. And so the best thing y'all can do for me is A, keep me on the prayer list, and B, download the app. Okay. Heather, back to you. Okay. Addressing uncomfortable situations at work can be scary for reasons that Ray has also talked about. There can be many variables at play: power dynamics, trauma, racism, mental health, etc. How can women find the courage and the tact, okay, and the tact to share their truth while protecting themselves?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the story that I was going to share is something that happened later in my career journey, but I wish I had had the confidence to speak up earlier in my career when I was in these situations. And I don't know if I would say that it was toxic per se, but I definitely had that anxiety about going into work, whatever day it was the next day. And, you know, this was an opportunity that I got that we were building a new organization. So we were all kind of coming together, building something from scratch. And the executive leader that I worked for was known as being supportive of DE&I. He hired a very diverse team, in fact. But it's interesting, I remember this so vividly, and it was such a great lesson that it's easy to hire a diverse team. The hard part is creating a culture of inclusion, so then the team can operate and perform at a high level. And that's not what this leader did. He hired a lot of different people to come together, but that's, again, if you have different backgrounds, experiences, the benefit of that is that you can be more innovative and, your ideas are more creative. But again, if you're not creating the environment that's either safe or collaborative, none of that is going to happen, and none of that matters. And so while this leader was known as being very supportive of DE&I, it was probably the worst and least inclusive leader I had ever worked for. I was the only woman on the leadership team, which was challenging. I had to speak up a lot. My ideas were always repeated by a man later, and then it was, seen as a wonderful idea. I didn't get a lot of credit for the experience that I was bringing to the team, and I was getting really frustrated by it. And so I felt like I had nothing to lose, and so I decided to say something, and I confronted the leader. We had a meeting where he was going to give me feedback about not contributing in a meeting. And because we were building a new organization, we were in these all-day meetings. I had had my third child maybe several months before, and I was still breastfeeding. And so I was nursing still at work and pumping at work. And so, I'd be in the meetings, but I'd kind of sit next to the door because I needed to leave every 3 hours in order to go pump at work. It was a wonderful benefit that the company provides. So anyway, the leader had said to me, hey, do you know what a scrum is? And I was like, yes, I know what a scrum is. Luckily I did. It's kind of like the huddle for rugby, right? And he said, what I've noticed is that you're not in the scrum in meetings. You're sitting on the outskirts, and that's why we can't hear you. And I said, well, actually, I'm sitting outside of the scrum because I need to go pump. And he had no idea. And the look on his face was classic. I mean, it was one of those things where it's like, again, you pride yourself on, hiring a woman of color to be on this leadership team, and yet you know nothing about me. And so that was an important moment to advocate and speak up for myself. And then I went on further to say, and oh, by the way, you always side with the men in the room. You never side with me. You never champion my ideas. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, what about this, 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 and this? Receipts. I had examples.
She had them receipts.
Yeah, receipts.
Dates, times.
And he looked at me, and he knew I was right. And he said that he would do better. I'd love to say that it was a complete 180. It wasn't, but I never regretted speaking up for myself. I was tired of being stressed out every morning to go into that next meeting with this leadership team or to be a part of this team. It was just taking a lot out of me, and I wasn't going to put up with it anymore. That said, I also made sure that my HR partner knew exactly how I was feeling and what my experience had been, and that I was advocating for myself. Long story very short, when that leader left the company, he wrote me a letter apologizing for how he had treated me. And he had talked about how he thought that, not that I was weak, but that, he ended up saying, you were stronger than I could have ever realized, and you were actually stronger than me. And you taught me a lot from this experience, and I'll never forget it.
Wow.
He knew that in the meeting, but he just waited till he left.
So what I will say is,
Let's not
and
get
I know
too
it's
much
easy. I know it's easy for me to say that I spoke up, but I did get to the point where it was like I have nothing to lose, and I had examples, and I was providing feedback. Like I did everything in the right way, and so don't sit there suffering.
Absolutely.
Just make sure that you're speaking up and you're leveraging HR when needed or our new resource.
Yes, thank you so much for that. One thing about I had nothing to lose, get your coins together, okay? There's no better safety than knowing that if this don't work out, I'm good for at least 3 months, okay? So I just wanted to add that. And then the other thing about going to HR, I know that we know now that HR is not your friend, but going to HR, my bad, girl. Listen, I, as a corporate HR person, my bad. However, going to HR is the first step in protecting yourself, because regardless of what's going on in Washington, there are still laws that pertain to the workplace and your rights at work. And so if you don't go to HR, you're basically giving these companies an out to say, okay, well, you didn't report it, so what do you want me to do about it, right? So you have to go to HR. It's not about them being your friend. It's about there are laws, there are policies in these handbooks that you have to abide by, and when those things are not happening, they need to know so that, if stuff has to go left, we have the receipts.
And can I just say something?
Quickly.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Quickly. She's absolutely right. When you go to HR, it puts us on alert. So when you are bringing your concerns to us, even when you say, I don't want you to do anything with this, we can't do that. It puts us on alert. So as an HR representative, we are supposed to take the risk that not working on your issue into consideration. It is, I don't want to say we're not your friend, but we are there to protect the company. But in protecting the company, we have to investigate your issues. And so absolutely right, please always go to HR. If anything, it puts us on red alert to have to follow up and address your concerns. That was quick. Right.
Girl, you did great. That was excellent. Excellent. Haley, I wanted to talk to you because as Black women in leadership positions, oftentimes other Black women of color look to us for, they told me not to do that, I'm so sorry. They look to us for representation, but there's a balance to be struck between advocating for yourself while also showing up for people and supporting those that look to us for support. And so from your coaching perspective, how do you help Black women address this balance of showing up for yourself while also supporting and showing up for others?
Yes, that's so important. I see it so much in my Black women leaders, because when we come in there, we already feel like I have to perform up here. Everybody else can perform down here. I have to give 110% every single day. That wears us out, y'all. Y'all know that. We get tired. And so we can't advocate for others if we aren't doing it for ourselves. If those that are coming up underneath us, if they see us overworked, as Ray said, working 10 hours, right? Everybody else is going home. We're always the last one there. We're always trying to save everybody. Something that I hear a lot with my clients is, I can't afford to fail, right? Everything is on me. So I had a client, she would stay behind and check the work of every single one of her employees.
Oh, wow.
Because she said she was not going to fail and she was not going to let it look bad to leadership. And I said, what is that doing to you? And she started thinking about it, and she said, it's costing me a lot, right? It was costing her time with her family, time with her kids. And I said, your team knows that you're gonna always be there to cover for them. You're not allowing them to grow. So you're not being a good leader. Leadership is about leading. We can't be in the day-to-day of the weeds every single day, because you're there to not do the work, but you're there to lead the team. And so when you realize that, you can help, you can delegate. I tell my clients all the time, delegate, delegate, delegate. But we know we don't want to because we want that control, right? When we control it, we want to know what the outcome is. And so I help them to see letting go of that control. I like it to riding a bike. If you've seen a child with the training wheels on, and they're saying, let go. And especially if it's your child, you don't want to let that bike go. You hold it on to it and you can't let it go. What happens if you let them go? They might fall. But that's okay, because what? They get back up with the biggest smile, and they're like, Mommy, look at me. And they get back up on that bike, and they try again. And it's kind of like that when you're managing a team. Letting them fail sometimes can be the best thing in the world for them, because it's going to allow them to grow. It's going to allow them new opportunities. Same thing for yourself. When you look at yourself and try new things, we will wear the most uncomfortable pair of shoes if they're cute. We will wear it all night long.
It will.
We will do it and know we look good. But when it comes to ourselves, to our jobs, we don't want to be uncomfortable. We want to stick to what works for us and what we feel good in. So I'm going to tell each and every one of you today, step outside of yourself and get uncomfortable. Because when you do that, you're going to grow, and you're going to advocate for yourself, and then you're going to advocate for others. And they're watching you, and they're going to say, she tried that. I can try it too. And it's just going to be beautiful. That's all I can say.
So at Cagebird HR, we support a lot of Black women all across the country through a lot of different issues and things that they're experiencing at work. And one of the common stories that we hear is that they push through a toxic work environment thinking that this is not the time for me to slack off. I need to, stay late, come early, take on extra assignments, ignoring the fact that they're unwell, you're not eating, you're not sleeping, your gut is no longer processing food, etc. Only to realize that they were not masking their exhaustion as well as they thought. And they received a low performance review despite all the extras that they were doing. In short, their resilience was used against them. Heather, can you talk about times that you have taken leave over the course of your career, as well as any fears or concerns you had with doing so, and how that impacted your ascent to the top?
Sure. So I think the first thing I want to say is that benefits are provided so that you use them, okay? So I think it's important that you know the benefits that your company provides, and I'm telling you, they're there so that they want employees to take advantage of them. If you don't take advantage of a benefit that's offered to you, that's really on you, and so I'm always telling people, make sure you know what your company offers. At Lilly, we offer a 3-year dependent care leave of absence. And I have had 3 children, so I've taken 3 maternity leaves, and I've also taken a dependent care leave of absence, as well as like a 90-day leave of absence. That was also for my child, a different child. But the story that I want to tell is my son, so he's my oldest child, was around 15 months old at the time. I was eligible for a promotion at that point in time, but the company was not necessarily in growth mode. It was probably more downsizing-ish at the time. And so I was in a job that I had been in for about 3 years, 3.5 years, and I was ready for the next level. I had the support for the next level, but I wasn't really learning anything new in that job. I was continuing to do the same thing. And what I realized was that the sacrifices that I was making at home weren't worth what I was doing at work. I wasn't happy. I felt like I had to maybe be something I wasn't in order to get promoted. I was just really frustrated, and it wasn't probably the healthiest situation. And I had the mom guilt of, well, I have a toddler at home and, again, I couldn't justify kind of what I was doing at work with the sacrifice I was making at home. So I decided to take a leave. It was the single biggest decision that I've ever made in my career. I was very nervous because I thought, okay, I'm eligible for a promotion to the next level and I'm gonna walk away from that. What if that opportunity comes up next week after I take this leave? And I can't, change my mind. I had mentors say, other people are gonna continue to progress and, while you decide to take a step back. Mind you, this was like 17 years ago, so I don't think anybody would say that now. But I was nervous about it. But again, I thought, I need to do this. It feels right. It's the right thing to do. And I have no regrets. The first thing I learned that first Monday when I didn't go to work and I was a stay-at-home mom essentially, was that the stock price did not go down.
Okay.
I know that I'm really important to the company, but you know what? I really was not that important to the company. But it was a good lesson for me to learn that, sometimes we pour ourselves into our work and you just kind of, don't realize that there's life outside of your job. So I learned that while I love my company, like I told you, I've been there for 27 years, but I learned that there's life outside of Eli Lilly and Company very quickly. It was funny, I also remember potty training my son at the time and thinking, I'd rather go back to work than do this right now. I'd rather do a presentation in front of this executive committee than teach my son how to do potty training. That said, I used that time. I didn't take all 3 years. It was actually a little less than 2. But I realized, who I wanted to be as a wife. I realized who I wanted to be as a mother. I even realized that if and when I came back to work, what kind of employee I wanted to be. And that time was invaluable, and that time to reflect and learn was, it was just amazing. So when I got the call to come back to work early, again, I still had another 18 months left kind of on this leave, I knew that I was gonna do it on my terms. I had realized, hey, we could survive on one salary, I don't need this job. And so it was so liberating to come back to work knowing that I was choosing to do that. I didn't have to do this. And so I thought, okay, if I'm gonna come back, I'm gonna do it my way. I'm gonna, literally bring my whole authentic self to work. I wasn't gonna try to assimilate into being what I thought it would take to be successful in the company. And the interesting thing is that once I made that decision and I did that, I had never been happier, more productive, and my career moved so fast after that because I stopped trying to be something that I wasn't, and I was showing up as Heather and contributing as Heather and realizing that if the company didn't want that, I didn't need the company.
Hello? Can I get an amen for that?
And so really the lesson there for me was I came back to work on my terms, and it took me having to walk away from it to realize that. So I guess what I'm sharing with all of you is, yes, take leaves when you need them, because if your company offers them, they're there for a reason. But also realize that you will perform better, you will be happier when you show up as you. I got two or three promotions after that, and again, I was much happier and much more productive, and I was better at home.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Again, get your coins together, okay? If y'all need proof, look at Don Lemon, okay? He's living a great life right now. Okay, we have time for one more question. And so, Ray, I wanted to talk to you because right now in this environment, unfortunately, people are losing their jobs, and we pray that that does not happen to anyone in here, but we do need to be prepared. And so, Ray, I wanted to ask you the best practices for leaving organizations, signing severance agreements, processing a layoff. What advice, tips do you have? And then we will go to questions.
Absolutely. Great question. So like you said, we are experiencing a lot of layoffs, people losing their jobs. But when it's on your terms and you decide to leave the organization, I always tell people, be professional when you leave the organization. Put in your notice in writing, whether it's 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, depending on your position. We do have employees that ghost. They just walk out and we never see them again. But because we're so well connected, I can get on all of your LinkedIns. I can see where you work. I can see how I'm connected to your employer. And we do this. I can get on the phone and say, hey, Keisha, you know, I know Heather was working out at Lilly. Tell me a little bit about her. Did you work with her? Do we do this? Absolutely. It happens. So if you leave an organization unprofessionally, it can follow you. It can follow you to your next employer. And so we just want to make sure that we put it in writing. There are going to be situations and times where you are working in a hostile work environment or a toxic work environment where you may not be able to work out that notice, but at least you've put it in writing and you've sent it to Human Resources, your friend, and you've also sent it, and you've sent it to your leader as well. And in terms of severance agreements, I'm glad you brought that up. When it comes to severance agreements, if you are in that situation where you are offered a severance agreement, you do not have to sign that severance agreement right then and there. Especially if you're over the age of 40, you have legally 21 days at minimum to sign that severance agreement. You need to take it home. You need to read it over. You need to let someone else read it over. You need to allow your attorney to read it over. And just like job offers, severance agreements can be negotiated. So if they're offering you 3 months, you can go back and ask for 6 months. If they're offering you 2 months of benefit coverage, you can go back and ask for 6 months. That bonus that you were supposed to get at the end of the month, you can ask for that in full, or you can ask for a prorated amount. But when you sign it right then and there, you give up all of that, you give up that power to negotiate. Again, we do not negotiate as Black women. And so don't give up that power, take that severance home, read it over, allow your attorney to read it over, and change those terms and conditions. And I don't care what any company says about what's in policy and what's standard, they can make those changes based on what you want those terms and conditions to be.
Also, I would add to that, if you're gonna quit a job, do so on the first of the month or as close to the first of the month as possible, because your health insurance lasts until the last calendar day in which you are employed. So there's no real benefit in leaving like in the middle of the month. Just always quit on the first, so at least you get health insurance to the end of the month, okay? Listen, I'm trying to tell y'all the tea, okay? This is a wonderful conversation. I am so inspired by each and every one of you, and I look forward to our continued relationship and sisterhood. And so I will, first of all, do y'all have anything y'all want to press, anything y'all want to sell, anything like that? Anything, your website, anything?
Follow MyHRLane. We're on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and we would love for you to follow us.
Anybody else? Okay, download work receipts, y'all, okay. We do have time for questions. If you want to come to the microphone, if you have questions, I would say that if you have like personal stories you want to share that's sensitive, just hang back, we'll talk to y'all. But if not, you have questions, you can go to the mic. Otherwise, I can keep yapping. Nobody? Okay, here we go.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you, ladies, for being here. To introduce myself, Ashley Mercier, I work at Lilly. My question to the panelists is, as a Black woman, we deal with microaggressions in the workplace. Do you have any advice for us when dealing with microaggressions, especially with individuals with heavy influence in your department, and how to navigate that? If it's not heavy enough to where you feel comfortable going to HR, but also you don't want to put your manager in a position to where they have to choose to support you or to support, for instance, their boss, who is the one that's doing the microaggression.
You want to take that?
You can.
So I think you have to speak up. And I think one of the things that you've heard from all of us is you have to advocate for yourself. There is a fear and there is a risk when you advocate for yourself. But when you do speak up, and again, once that veil comes off, depending on how they react, you have to decide whether or not that's the place where you want to be. One of the things that we don't do very well is speaking up for ourselves because we don't want to take that risk in losing that position, right? We don't want to take a risk of losing the money, the opportunity to move up. But it is a conversation that you do have to get past that barrier of fear and have that conversation with your boss about what your boss is doing. And then you have to decide on, based on their response, how do you navigate the next steps? Because the next step may be going to human resources and having a conversation with resources if it's not resolved. So my advice to you would be take that step, get past that fear, have that conversation with your boss, allow your boss, you're working that chain of command, allow your boss to address those concerns, and if it doesn't get resolved, then pull in human resources. But you have to have that, you have to take off that veil, you have to step through that boundary, and you have to step through that fear. You have to advocate for yourself, because I'm gonna tell you no one else is gonna do it.
Yeah. The thing that I would add to that, and I know I already talked about my example, I think the hard part about microaggressions is that it literally is death by 1,000 cuts. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I think the example I shared where I spoke up and I just said, here, I have all these examples, you know, of this is, maybe it's not what you intended, but this is the impact that it had on me. I do think speaking up is really important. I mean, you won't regret it, and that's your experience and that's your truth, and you need to advocate, you know, for what is and isn't acceptable. And I think as long as you have those examples, you'll be okay.
I think one thing that we brought up earlier was the ABW, the angry black woman. They want to bait you. They want to get a response from you. People know what they're doing. I had a client, and she's very, you could tell her emotions in her face. And she said there was a gentleman on the leadership team, and every time they would have a leadership meeting, he would say something that he knew would aggravate her. And before we started coaching, she would get her face all scrunched up, and she'd get into it with him, and they're back and forth. And when I started coaching with her, I told her, he knows what to do. He knows how to push your buttons. He knows how to get a reaction out of you. What you have to do is stop giving into that. And we worked so much. And one of the things she did, I said, bring a notebook with you. And everything that you're thinking in your mind, write down in that notebook. They'll think you're taking notes. And you're all involved in the meeting, and you're so engaged. But you're writing every little thing that's coming through your mind, write it on that sheet of paper. And that's keeping it coming out of your mouth and out of your face. You putting it on that paper. And so don't allow people to pull you into their space. Talk and share and do what you need to do. We talked about mentorship earlier, advocating, having allies, having people you trust that you can go and talk to. And then if it needs to escalate, as they brought out, follow those steps. But don't allow people to take you to their space. Stay in your space and be who you are.
Or if God is still working on you like he's still working on me, and you need something prescriptive to say, like for example, somebody says, oh my God, Cierra, you're so articulate. I'm like, really, why would you think that? What makes you say that? Because I'm black. That's the part that's silent. So asking these open-ended questions that makes them think about what it is that they've said is also just something that you can say in the moment that's very neutral, but also to the point. Next question.
Hi, ladies. My name's Juanita Hanley. I'm with ADP. And this question is for the three of you who are founders. I'm curious to know, what was it that made you make a transition from a corporate environment to starting your own? And if you were self-funded or if you took on investors. Thanks.
I'll go first as the owner of well, it's really two businesses, y'all. I did this stuff all wrong. Like I started one business and then I made it into an app and then it's all going very well. The thing that made me leave though, it is, I ain't gonna lie, I'm talking about stuff. No, the thing that made me leave corporate America, so I'm the daughter of an entrepreneur, so corporate America was never like the end all be all for me. Like that's not even an environment that I grew up in or around or listened to. So I went into corporate America knowing like, look, I'm gonna get this check and I'm gonna figure something out, okay? And I had a wonderful career. I never had to look for a job, but I just realized at some point that it really didn't matter how good I was. Like, I was loud and mouthy and funny, and they just weren't gonna give me my just due. And one day I showed up and the white girls got to saying racist stuff, and I was like, okay, call my lawyer, got my check, and then I started my business. And the first 2 years, hello, I'm not playing with these people. I'm in HR, y'all, I know the rules. And so I started my business, and that was 3 years ago. After 2 years, we did $1 million. Last year, thank y'all. Last year, I started building worker seats in stealth. To this day, I've not taken any investment. I started that business with $200, and now it is what it is. So, but we are raising money right now, but yeah, that's the reason why. They just played with me one too many times, and I just left.
Oh, my business is self-funded. I haven't taken any money from investors either. When I was younger and I thought about my future, like you think about your vision and what you're going to do with your life, I was going to be a CPA, I was going to be corporate, I was that girl. I knew that I was going to retire from corporate and all of that. And I can't lie, I enjoyed corporate life. I loved the lunches, the free food, all of that stuff. I was there. Y'all feed me, I'm going to be right there. So I loved it. But I found that as I continued to progress, I worked in finance for 14 years, and I saw, especially when you work in finance, you see the money, you see what people are making, and you see the stuff there. But I'm like, they paying him that, and I'm telling him what to do, and so it just got to me. So I came home one day and I told my husband, I could not prepare another financial statement for nobody. He said, I am done. He said, and that's when she said, keep your coins right, because my husband said, just go ahead, quit that job, and figure out what you want to do. And that's when I got into tech. I was in tech for about 9 years, started there with no experience, really loved that. But again, it came back to just seeing the injustice and just seeing how people were treated. And I'm like, I'm good, I know I'm good, but is everybody always going to see I'm good in the environment that I'm working in? And so I had a mentor, and she said, Haley, what do you want? What is it that you want? Not what everybody else wants for you, or not what people tell you you're good at, but what is it that you want? And that really helped me to examine and look at my life and where I wanted to go for my future. And I saw that was really entrepreneurship for me. And I had been so afraid. Like I dabbled in it a little bit, still have a corporate job, and then I say, I don't want to worry about it. But then I finally said, as I'm getting older, I need to make that decision. I need to make that choice and just go all in, right? Because what's the worst that can happen? I could fail, but that's okay. So I realized, and I can't go out and preach and tell y'all when I'm coaching you to go take chances and get uncomfortable, and I'm not getting uncomfortable, right? And so that's something when my coach helped me to realize, to take chances, that I only did things that I could control, and I knew I was going to be a success at. That was my motto. I'll do it. If I know I can do it, I'm going to be a success. If I can't control it, I'm not going to do it. But this stepping out into my own helped me to realize that I can let go of that control a little bit and try something new and see what happens. And y'all, I wake up every day and I'm so excited because I get to work with people like you. And it's the best thing in the world. I get to help women leaders show up and be themselves, whatever it may be. When I see that aha moment with my client and it just life-changing for them, that is so fulfilling for me and so impactful. So that's what keeps me going, and I just enjoy it so much.
Yes, pretty.
And then for me, I'll keep it short because I can be long-winded. So I realized that I could do this job on my own versus working typically for a man and having someone tell me what I needed to do day in and day out. It was a scary decision, and I can't remember where the young lady was who asked the question, but there you go. Completely self-funded. No investors. I took the risk. I sold my house. I moved to a new city, and I started to build up my clientele. And so our clientele now is throughout the US, and we also are in Spain as well with clients. And so it was a risk that I had to take because, like the ladies have said, if I didn't take that risk, I wouldn't know if I could do it. And I can always go back to corporate America. I can always find an HR job. But starting my own company, we've been doing it for 5 years. We continue to grow, and I don't think I ever want to go back to corporate America.
Amen to that, girl. I couldn't go back.
Hi, I'm Ebony Love, and I'm from UKG. And I have a question because I am in IT, and a lot of the things that you guys talked about in terms of toxic work environments, if you have any advice on that specifically, navigating that being virtual, not being in the space that everybody else is in, and trying to figure out like where people are coming from, not having the time spent together. One of the things that I've noticed is that when our company merged about 5 years ago, and they cut off all of our meetings, team meetings, things that we would do together. So how do you navigate that when you don't really have the opportunity to be in front of people, so you don't think that you're being or having those micro or whatever it is, so you can actually really interpret and assess what's going on? Because I've had to have those moments when I do get the opportunity to be with my team. It's totally different. So having that in my head, feeling like I'm being defensive or things are going on, and then when we get together, the work environment is much better. So if you have any advice on that, that would be great.
I'll take it. I'll say, well, first of all, create the spaces and those opportunities for yourself. Reach out to people on your team to have one-on-ones, to have coffee chats, to have just a get-to-know-you type session. Those types of things can help so much. I just did a leadership program specifically for Black women, and one of their assignments were to have 30 coffee chats. They were like, what? I can't do that. It was like, no, what are you talking about? A lot of us don't like networking. I did not like to network when I was at work. I like to go in there, keep my head down, and do my job, as we've talked about, right? But you're not advocating for yourself. You're going to get looked over. So you create those spaces. Talk to other people. Set up. People, like we talked about this morning, someone said people love to talk about themselves, right? So when you get in those situations, ask them about themselves. Ask them how they get where they are. Look for a mentor. Look for someone in the company that you may not know, or someone that wants to be, or where you are, or you want to be where they are. And just build those genuine, authentic connections, and that can really help. And also, too, don't be afraid to ask people for help. Like if you're working on a project or you just want somebody's opinion, go to them and say, hey, I was working on this. I'd love to get your idea. I'd love to get your thought. And then that'll open up, again, building up relationships and building that communication, and that can open up so many doors for you.
Yeah, I was actually going to say the same thing in terms of if you know that when you are spending time with your team that it is different, make sure that you're having a chance to create those opportunities anyway. I think, when you connect on a human level and you get to know someone on a human level, even if you're the one who has to try and create those touch points, I think we're more likely to give people the benefit of the doubt, especially in really stressful situations. And so I think about, as a leader of a team, I make it a point to get to know my team individually on a human level. I show my own vulnerability at work so that they know it's safe for them to do that. I hear you. I think when you're virtual, it is harder to do, but I think you can still, create those opportunities yourself and get to know people one-on-one. It makes, I think, the work collaborative environment that much easier. And when things are very, very high stress, I think once you've made a human connection with someone, you're far more likely to give them the benefit of the doubt, and they will do the same for you.
And with that, we are out of time. We will hang back to answer questions, but I just want to say thank y'all so much for being here.